Hey everybody, Travis with Reverse Music here. Today we are going to do a fret level, crown, and polish on our StewMac kit neck. See you on the other side. Now there are a couple things to keep in mind here. We have a fretboard that's not finished, which means we don't have to worry about hitting finish with our fret files. That is very, very important. If you have a finished fretboard, you should be putting masking tape on this before you're using these files. I have personally watched somebody screw up a lacquered fretboard with one of these files. And if you could do it with this one, I promise you can do it twice as fast with this one. Since I did file down these edges over here, I'm gonna do the same thing right over here. We're just gonna use this one. If you had a nut on here, obviously you wouldn't be able to come all the way down here. All right, if you do have a nut, I really recommend just putting some masking tape over it, especially at this stage. Keep that masking tape on there the whole time. We don't wanna get that nut either all dirty, especially if it's bone or a white tusk. And we don't wanna damage it either with any of the tools we're using. Our edges are now beveled. We have perfect lines on it. I don't feel the frets at all, which is fantastic. I love fretboards where there's just nothing there on the edge. But this is a brand new fretboard, so we're not done with these edges. We need to actually dress the ends as well. I do that right after I get done leveling. So how do we start leveling? The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna check our neck and make sure that it is perfectly straight. There's a lot of theories out there about whether or not you leave a little relief in the neck to try to show neck tension or string tension and stuff like that. I try to go perfectly straight. There's a couple reasons why. When I set up my guitars, I try to get that neck as straight as possible. I know there's people out there think that you need the relief in the neck. If you level your frets well enough, that neck can be nearly straight if you have a well-built guitar. We plan on having a well-built guitar, so we're gonna level this fretboard perfectly while the neck is as straight as possible. So these specific necks need a 4mm Allen key to turn. So I have my StewMac Allen key right here. Let's set our straight edge on it and see where we're at. Looks like we're overbowed. Spot on. So remember, if you watched my last video when we were talking about necks during the SG setup, if your neck is bent this way, you need to tighten that truss rod. If your neck is bent this way, you need to loosen it. So we loosened it up a little bit. Whenever I'm loosening a truss rod and it feels like it's going loose, I always go a little looser than I need to go, and then I tighten it a little bit. I don't like to just loosen and leave it the way it is. Again, over loosen and then bring it back up to where you want it. Next step is going to be protecting this fretboard. So I'm using StewMac tape rolls because of the convenience. If you are just a at-home person doing it yourself, you can buy pretty much anything masking tape-wise off the market. I simply use this because I like to not have to cut anything for sizes, especially these really thin strips that you see here. And I'm able to just do this much quicker, and it saves me time, even though it's a little bit more expensive. I am going to show something that I think is rather important. When we are doing tape, it is so important that we get this tape right up against the fret, but not on the fret. So there's still no wood exposed here, but we're not on the fret at all. We want to expose all of the side of the fret because we are going to use that when we're profiling or crowning our frets. And we're back. I do want to stress again how important it is to tape this perfectly. So take your time. Again, fret leveling is one of the most important things to do for your guitar. Do not cheat these steps. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mark the tops of the frets with a permanent marker. If you watch fret leveling videos before online, you've seen that other people do this. Some people use two different colors, one for low spots, one for high spots, all that stuff. We got a brand new fretboard. I'm just gonna use one color. I just happen to grab the blue one. Color doesn't matter. All we're using this for is to see if we've removed anything from the top of that fret. So Theoretically, if we have a mark here on all 3 frets and we're leveling and this fret in the middle still has blue all over it, that means this fret's clearly lower than the other frets right now. This is a brand new fretboard, so our level isn't that bad. We're not going to need to do low, high parts, all that. It should be a fairly quick level. I also see other videos where people are putting the marker on the fret before they tape it off. I highly suggest you tape off your fretboard and then you use your marker. It is very easy for your hand to just slip and go oop on your fretboard. Whether it's black or blue, it's showing up, especially on a lacquered neck, especially when we're using permanent markers. So be sure to tape before we're using the marker. So 2 quick things while I got you here. The first thing is I did forget to mention that in the kit instructions, it does tell you to seat any frets that need seating. I looked at this before I started the video. There were no frets that looked like they needed any sort of seating done. So we have nothing there. If you do need to reseat a fret, there are a couple ways to do it, but the absolute cheapest way is to just get yourself a fret hammer and then tap that back in with some support underneath that neck. Again, I like to use the StewMac stuff. There's a nice StewMac neck support here. You would be able to just tap this fret in. So that goes for seating frets. Our frets were all seated very well. I was actually very happy with that. Our frets are actually pretty darn level too, but again, it doesn't matter how close to level they are. We want this perfect so it plays its absolute best. I've put marker on the top of all the frets. What I'm gonna do now is just pick up some tools and let this dry real quick. Hey, we're back. So I mentioned this StewMac file does all, and it certainly does. We could level the frets with this. But I also mentioned that I like to use this when I'm trying to take off a lot of material. In this case, I'm not trying to take off a lot of material. So what I'm going to use is my StewMac straight edge. And this one specifically, you see how we have the ridges here. This one is designed to be able to go under strings to do fret levels while the strings are still in the guitar. I wanted to try it out. This is level regardless if I'm using it under strings or not, so I figured why not just get the understring one, check it out for a while. I ended up not being a fan of doing fret levels with strings on. I don't see or feel the benefits from it. So with that being said, I still have the understring one, but I just don't use it as an understring one, I just use it as a straight edge. When I buy these, I also buy sandpaper. So this is 3M sandpaper, it's very high quality, again from StewMac. And no, I'm not sponsored by them. It's just sticky on one side so that I don't have to worry about putting double-sided tape on and then cutting sandpaper perfectly to this width, blah, blah, blah. I use from 220 grit all the way up to 800 grit. This fretboard, again, we don't need a lot of material taken off. So the 220 and the 320, I'm gonna completely skip. I'm going straight to the 400. We're gonna see how that goes. And then we'll probably go 600, 800 just to make the tops nice and smooth. Here's the scary part. Now we gotta level these frets perfectly, right? Each fret has a radius that matches that fretboard. We wanna keep that radius in the guitar. That's gonna give you your best, smoothest bends. The easiest way to do that is to do thirds on the fretboard. If you file this 5 times, you do this 5 times, and you do this 5 times. When you've done it over and over and over again, and you've done these 100 times like I have, you tend to be a little more loose because you can really feel it with your hands. If this is the first time you've done this, try to keep it dressed right. We're gonna start right in the middle. We're gonna go back and forth a couple times. We wanna do little small chunks. We don't wanna put a lot of pressure on. We're letting the sandpaper do all the work. So I stop after a couple because I want to now see how much marker we took off. And you can see it's not a ton. So we have some work to do. So again, I've done this a lot, so you're gonna see me going back and forth, but we're gonna start level these. So we've done it for a couple minutes and you can see there's some frets like this first one, that have all the marker completely removed. And then there's some that still have quite a bit of marker. The ones that have quite a bit of marker left are the lower spots on the fretboard. So we are gonna keep going with this 400 grit until we've broken through to that. This has actually gone pretty quickly. If this wasn't going as fast as it was, I would actually step back down and do like a 320 or a 220 and build my way back up. This is actually pulling the fret off fast enough where I'm not worried about it. So we're gonna do this for a few more minutes. We're gonna step up to 600, we're gonna do the same thing, then we're gonna step up to the 800 and do the same thing. The reason why we wanna go all the way up to 800 is because I want the tops of these frets as smooth as possible without us having to do more sanding on the top after we level. Because after we level and we sand more, we're changing the level of that fret. I wanna be done changing the levels of the frets when I'm done with this straight edge, which is why I go all the way up to the 800. We'll see you on the other side. So here we are. You can see that some of these frets have very little taken off. Some of them are quite flat on top. That flat on top is what we absolutely do not want. And that's where crowning comes in. Now, I use 2 tools specifically to crown most of the time, and I say about 90% of the time. This is the one I use the other 10% of the time. This is a 3-sided file. And on the edges, we have it rounded so that we can't hurt any material. And what you would do is you would take this file and you would use this file against the side of the frets to bring that big flat edge to a nice crown, okay? StewMac has started making some wonderful, what they call CenterZ files. And all it is just a little file like this. This is the 150 grit. There's also, I wanna say, it's either 300 or 320 grit as well. And what it does is it's basically a diamond file that's already centered perfectly for you, and you can use it over the entire fret at the same time. It takes off both edges and creates a perfectly centered file and fret for you. Why is that important? If your fret is perfectly centered on that crown, you are gonna have your best intonation at that point. I personally like very, very crowned frets. They bend the easiest, and I'm a very light player. I don't push hard, so if I'm crowned real nice and tight, without pushing hard, I don't get intonation issues. Some people, when it's crowned too much and they push too hard, they put all their notes sharp and they hate it. Again, I'm a very light player, and I don't have that issue, and I just find the guitar is way more comfortable for that. Since I'm the one playing this, that's the way I'm gonna do it for myself personally. And I'm going to start going back and forth here. So this is what this looks like after I've done just with the 150 grit. You can see a dust line right down the middle of that, I hope. And that kind of shows you what you've crowned. That shows you how thin the top of your fret is. And I like to go slightly thinner than that, but I'm doing all this in real time so you see how much time I spend on just one fret with the 150 grit. That's a nice thin line. That's what I love to see. Next step, after the 150 grit is taken care of, what I do is sometimes I'll go to my 300 grit one, sometimes I'll just grab this CenterZ file that I have as well, It has a side for fat frets and it has a side for narrow frets. Just gonna look at it. I actually marked which one the wide side is and which one the narrow side is on here. What I'm doing here is I'm actually using this as like a step up sandpaper. 150 grit's very, very, very heavy. There's scratches all along the side of this that are gonna take forever to get out with sandpaper. This is gonna smooth that out a little better so that when we do go to sand the sides of these frets and polish them up, we're just gonna have to do a little less work with the sandpaper. Now that we're done with that file, you see that dust line? That's nice and fine. We have a nice thin crown on the top. That's what we're going for in every fret. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and go down the entire fretboard. We're gonna do this on every single fret until they all look exactly the same. See you real soon. Welcome back. It's been about 40 minutes. I've gone and done a crown on every single fret, starting with the 150, moving to the Z file, the CenterZ File. I tend to do a couple frets at a time so that I'm not using one tool for like 7 frets in a row, getting it really warm and wearing it out faster. I mentioned fret ends as a thing we want to take care of. When you're using this tool, fret ends can't be taken care of at the same time. What you'll have to do is you'll have to go back and use one of these end files and go ahead and take off the snips and just do a whole fret end dressing. I have another video for that. I'll go ahead and link that in the description below. If you were using something like this, when you're crowning this, all you have to do is just roll it over the edge and make sure that you get those edges taken care of, and they're pretty much done. So you've already done your fret end dressing while you're doing your crowning with using this tool. So now we have some very level, very crowned frets, but very ugly and gross frets. If you put this on a guitar right now and you went to bend a note, all you would hear is just that string scratching along these rough frets. How do we polish them? There's a lot of people that do a ton of different things. This is something that I thought was really a shortcut, and I thought this was cheating for a long time. Then I did it a couple times and realized, all right, this works super, super well. What I do is I start with some 400 grit wet dry sandpaper. I keep it dry. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up and down this neck, and what it's gonna do is just slowly start pulling all of these scratches out of the frets and start sanding this up. I'm gonna go 400, then I'm gonna go 600, I'm gonna go 800, and then I'm gonna go 1,000. And then I'll meet you guys back here when it's all done. One last thing to keep in mind while you're doing this is to not stay in one area for too long, because if you're just running this over the top of the frets, you're gonna wear down that level that we just got done doing a bunch of. So don't stick in one area over and over and over and over again, or the fret level is kind of pointless at that point. Make sure that you are in fact moving around and getting the sides of the frets, not just the tops. After I finish my 1000 grit sandpaper, I am then going to take some 4-0 steel wool and I'm going to polish these out back and forth this way. No more across the fretboard. Steel wool's completely done, and at this point in the process, you should have a very finished product. It is okay to be done at this point if you want, especially if you don't have the tools that I'm about to use again as far as polishing our frets goes. As you can see, we do have some really nice polished frets here. There's nothing wrong with what's going on with this. I just want to go even further as far as polishing goes, and I do this with every customer's guitar. At StewMac, you can get these awesome fret polishing wheels. There are red ones, and then there are green ones laying around somewhere. I think you'll have to take my word for it. I'm gonna have to find it to use it. The red one is for fine, the green is for extra fine. It goes onto the end of a Dremel. So you see here I have my Dremel. I add an extension on my Dremel just so I have a little more play with it. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn our Dremel on, and then we are going to polish up this fret even more so. I tend to do one side all the way down, I flip it over, and then I do the other side the other way. It keeps this wheel from being overused too much. So we'll do 2 or 3 frets, then we'll flip it over, we'll go and we'll do the back side of those frets. And you're gonna see a huge difference when we're actually done, especially after the fine polishing wheel, extra fine polishing wheel, which I just found right here. Let's go. Now I'm hoping that the camera can pick up the difference, because in person there's a significant difference. But the first 3 frets we've done the fine polishing, and we haven't done the extra fine yet, and on the rest of it we just did steel wool. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do the rest with the fine and the extra fine, and then we'll show you a nice overview after that. Welcome back. If you end up going the extra mile, awesome, congrats. We get some super shiny frets. And I certainly hope the camera's picking up the difference between what we had before and how shiny these are now. Next step in the process, we're gonna remove this tape. We're gonna start cleaning things up. I just cleaned it up with some naphtha to make sure we had any compounds or anything buffing wise left over, that was removed. And there we are. Some beautiful polished frets, all leveled and ready to go. So it was quite a bit of work. I know the video is much shorter than the actual work is. I've spent about 2 hours tops on this. Again, not a tough level to do, but really happy with the results. These frets are nice and crowned. They're definitely level. They're super shiny and polished, and I can't wait to put this on a guitar and play it. I think it's gonna play fantastic. Again, very, very happy with the results. If you follow these steps and you take your time doing it, you should be getting similar results. I will tell you, like my first probably 10 fret levels were never smooth. They didn't go this smoothly. They didn't turn out this nice. It takes practice. But with that being said, once you've gotten that out of the way, you can get some really fantastic looking frets coming out when it's all said and done. These are nice and shiny. They're almost mirror-like. So if you enjoyed watching this video, if you want to see more steps in our StewMac kit, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like the video, and hit that bell icon so you get notifications for our next videos. Our next video, we're going to start working on the body, which is something we haven't done yet. So I'm really excited to start sanding that down and getting that ready to go for paint. Until next time, we'll see you guys later and keep rocking. Thanks so much.